Everything changed the moment a certain WNBA superstar made a move no one expected. For months, critics had whispered the same rumor over and over. Nobody wants to play with Caitlyn Clark in Indiana. People clung to that narrative like it was gospel, pointing to swirling controversies and one very pointed remark from a legend in the women's game. Yet, in one stunning signing, all those doubts crumbled. Suddenly, the naysayers who insisted Clark was a magnet for drama had to confront a harsh new truth. Maybe they were the ones who got it all wrong. The basketball world erupted in disbelief, and the shockwaves are still reverberating. How did a team that was supposedly so toxic flip the script and become the destination for veterans craving a championship run? Keep watching, because we're about to break down every twist and turn in the most dramatic narrative shift the WNBA has seen in years. For a long time, the Indiana Fever bore the brunt of relentless criticism. Much of it stemmed from one statement delivered by the legendary Cheryl Swoops, who claimed that nobody in the league was rushing to Indiana's doorstep. Her words painted a picture of a star like Caitlyn Clark dragging a giant circus wherever she went, unwanted media attention, rowdy fans, and endless drama. According to this storyline, veterans would do anything to avoid signing up for that level of spotlight. The rumor mill didn't stop there. Online forums, sports commentators, and even some ex-players hopped on the same bandwagon. The Indiana locker room was chaotic. The players were disgruntled. The Fever's environment was so poorly managed that no veteran star would ever choose to go there. A swirl of speculation took hold, and critics repeated the same tired explanation as if announcing, "See, no one's lining up to join Clark. She's clearly a problem." Yet, for all the sensational claims, no one provided any concrete evidence of a fractured locker room. Sure, the team wasn't meeting playoff expectations, but is that proof of toxicity? Then came the biggest turning point, the realization that one major signing was on the horizon. Rumors trickled out that a multi-time champion had the Fever at the top of her list, but the naysayers scoffed. Their response was simple. Who in their right mind would want to deal with Caitlyn's hype machine? But that wasn't the whole story. Behind the scenes, Indiana's front office had been quietly working around the clock, envisioning a competitive, possibly title-contending squad. They'd planned a homecoming that would shift the conversation forever. And as soon as the deal was announced, the narrative about nobody wants to play here collapsed faster than anyone could have imagined. Enter Natasha Howard, a three-time WNBA champion, former Defensive Player of the Year, an all-around basketball phenomenon. We're not talking about some mid-tier role player forced to settle for a struggling team. We're talking about one of the most respected veterans in the league, someone who could choose any franchise she pleased. And she chose the Indiana Fever. To understand how shocking this was, we have to go back to Howard's beginnings. In 2014, she was drafted by the Fever with the 5th overall pick. Although she eventually found massive success with other franchises, that early stretch in Indiana planted a seed. She never forgot where she started, and more importantly, she never forgot the sense of promise and unfinished business that lingered when she left. When Howard stepped onto the stage at her press conference, wearing that wide grin that seemed to say, "I'm right where I belong," it was game over for the old rumor that the Fever locker room repelled top-tier talent. She didn't mince words. She spoke about destiny, about being truly happy to return, about how the organization had shown genuine respect for her talents. There was no trace of reluctance or regret in her eyes. Instead, she projected sheer excitement. But the real dagger for the doubters? Howard made it crystal clear this wasn't just about her personal history with Indiana. She specifically mentioned her eagerness to share the floor with Caitlyn Clark and the rest of the Fever Corps. Critics like Cheryl Swoops had insisted no big names would ever want to feed off Clark's high-voltage brand of basketball. Howard shattered that notion in a matter of seconds, pointing to the synergy she envisioned with Clark's passing, Kelsey Mitchell's scoring, and Aaliyah Boston's presence in the paint. In one press conference, she torched the entire "nobody wants to play" their narrative. That emotional energy wasn't a calculated PR stunt either. When the Fever presented Howard with her original 2014 jersey, you could see the full-circle moment overwhelm her. This was part nostalgia, part future vision, and 100% a message to the league. Indiana is building something real. The critics, quite frankly, didn't know what they were talking about. It's easy to look at Howard's decision as just a nostalgic reunion. But there's a deeper layer. Her skill set dovetails seamlessly with Caitlyn Clark's style of play. Clark isn't just a sharpshooter who can put up points in bunches. She's one of the most electric passers the game has seen in years. Meanwhile, Howard thrives in transition, constantly looking for opportunities to explode to the rim or catch defenders off guard. Put those two together in a fast-paced offense, and you're looking at a brand new highlight reel every single night. Offensively, Howard brings proven scoring chops. She averaged 18 points per game last season, slotting her among the league's elite. But she's not a one-trick pony. She's also a relentless rebounder, averaging around 7 boards per game. That means more second-chance points and more opportunities for Clark to make game-changing plays in transition. And then there's Defense Howard's calling card. She's a perennial Defensive Player of the Year contender. Think about how many times Caitlyn Clark has had to carry teams by herself, only to see opponents exploit weaknesses on the other end of the floor. Those days could be gone. Howard's near 7-foot wingspan, her ability to lock down multiple positions, and her knack for swatting away shots or intercepting passes add a totally new dimension to Indiana's overall scheme. The result is a pick-your-poison dilemma for rival coaches. Zero in on stopping Clark's passing lanes, and Howard will punish you inside. Drift too many defenders toward Howard, and Clark will find shooters on the perimeter or slice right through the lane herself. This multi-pronged attack is what championship teams are made of: unpredictability. It's the same formula that has driven dynasties in every era of basketball: talent that complements talent, creating unstoppable synergy. As for Clark, she's never had a big quite like Howard in terms of agility, scoring ability, and defensive presence. The phrase fast break duo doesn't even do them justice. We might see triple-doubles from Clark become a nightly expectation, and Howard's scoring could explode with those extra assists. It's the best of both worlds, a dynamic partnership that emphasizes each player's strengths. Natasha Howard might be the headliner, but she's not the only heavyweight choosing Indiana. Dewana Bonner, who boasts her own championship track record, also decided the Fever was the right fit. Sophie Cunningham, known for her fiery playoff performances and fearless shooting, jumped aboard too. And veteran point guard Sydney Colson, a two-time champion, rounded out the crew of veterans unafraid of the bright lights that come with Caitlyn Clark. In a league where top free agents often gravitate to the same few teams, like the Aces or the Liberty, seeing multiple championship vets unite in Indiana is jaw-dropping. Remember, this is the franchise that so many said was doomed to be a revolving door of marginal players and disgruntled rookies. Yet these experienced pros didn't just wind up here by accident, or as a last resort. They actively chose the Fever. This influx of talent completely undercuts the notion that Clark is some sort of radioactive presence. If anything, these signings confirm that the vibe in Indiana is trending up, not down. These players aren't signing multi-year deals on a whim. They're looking to build a contender. That means they believe in the coaching staff, the front office, and yes, Caitlyn Clark's star power. The narrative, once pushed by skeptics, gone. In its place is a new storyline, one where Indiana might be quietly stacking the deck to become the league's next major powerhouse. What's astonishing is how quickly this overhaul took place. Only a short time ago, the Fever were languishing at the bottom of the standings, struggling to attract top-tier talent. Then Clark arrived, Aaliyah Boston joined the cause, Kelsey Mitchell stayed committed, and next thing you know, the landscape shifted. Piece by piece, the roster found balance between up-and-coming youth and seasoned leadership. The front office showed foresight by identifying the exact types of veterans who could both contribute immediately and teach the younger core what a championship mindset looks like day to day. No more half measures. No more building for someday. The attitude now is that someday can be next season if everyone aligns perfectly. Howard, Bonner, Cunningham, and Colson each bring a unique championship pedigree. Between them, they have multiple titles, all-star appearances, defensive accolades, and a reputation for delivering in the biggest moments. Mix that with the raw talent and sheer excitement of players like Clark and Boston, and it's a recipe for something special. It's not just about on-court stats either. Culture matters. From all accounts, these veterans are not only fierce competitors but also strong locker room voices. They keep the energy positive, hold teammates accountable, and challenge younger players to rise above mistakes. That shift could be the missing puzzle piece for an organization that's been hunting for stability. Now, the Indiana Fever exude confidence, top to bottom. The critics who once piled onto the Fever's misfortunes must feel whiplash watching this transformation unfold. Indiana went from butt of the joke to potential champion in record time. It's as if the entire narrative snapped in half. Suddenly, sports analysts aren't just talking about a small step forward for the Fever. They're entertaining the possibility that this roster could chase a title as soon as next season. That's a massive leap, but it isn't baseless. Howard herself has made it clear she has multiple rings, and she sees no reason not to aim for another one immediately. She didn't come to Indiana to almost make the playoffs. She came to win. So did the others who signed on. Their collective ambition is the real story. How quickly everyone started speaking in terms of big goals, not baby steps. Remember when a major storyline was that Clark would overshadow the team with her stardom and bright lights personality? Ironically, Clark's presence has had the opposite effect, attracting big names who want to feed off her energy. At the same time, Clark benefits from the stability and leadership these veterans provide. It's a mutually beneficial cycle, a perfect blend of star power and veteran poise. And this is why so many analysts have flipped from doubters to believers. They see that intangible spark within the fever, where each piece locks into place. It's no longer the chaotic environment people like Cheryl Swoops suggested. Whether Swoops wants to admit it or not, a wave of proven winners have arrived to join forces with Clark, proving her remarks were off base at best. Look closer and you'll notice that the negative voices have gone suspiciously quiet. Where are all the nobody wants to play with Caitlyn Clark hot takes now? Faced with undeniable evidence that star-caliber veterans are choosing Indiana, the doubters have nowhere left to hide. Social media is flooded with highlights of Howard joking about how excited she is to catch passes from Clark. Dewana Bonner has taken to praising the Fever's front office for building something that's both modern and forward-thinking. Sophie Cunningham can't stop smiling about the chance to bring her playoff grit to a new environment poised for a breakout year. The fresh wave of positivity isn't just PR fluff. Every time Howard or Bonner or any of the other new additions speak, you can sense the authenticity. They're not shying away from the lofty expectations they're setting for themselves. They talk openly about championships, about forging immediate chemistry, about refusing to let youth become an excuse for anything less than excellence. That's the type of talk you hear from teams with a real shot. It's reminiscent of the early days of legendary dynasties, when a shift in culture preceded a surge of wins and trophies. Indiana hasn't won anything yet, but for the first time in a while, you can feel that championship electricity in the air. So here we are, at a turning point that nobody saw coming, except perhaps the people inside the organization who quietly believed all along. The Indiana Fever have assembled a roster that's a perfect mix of fearless youth and seasoned champions. Caitlyn Clark's presence, once criticized as a hindrance, has turned out to be exactly what a top-tier free agent like Natasha Howard was looking for. The so-called toxic locker room is anything but, now filled with players openly celebrating their unity and shared vision. This sudden transformation raises one daunting question for the rest of the WNBA. Is the league really ready for a reawakened Indiana Fever? Because this team isn't rolling over for anyone. They're not aiming just to improve their win-loss record. They're talking about rings, about building a dynasty that can stand toe-to-toe with the best squads in the league. That's an audacious claim for a franchise that finished near the bottom not long ago. Yet, it's not audacious when you consider who they brought in, champions who know what it takes to hoist a trophy, plus a generational star who thrives under the brightest lights. In the end, the biggest winners might be the fans. They've watched the Fever wade through disappointment, instability, and endless rumors. Now they get to see a new era unfold, one defined by genuine optimism and serious potential. The swirl of negativity is gone, replaced by real excitement about what's possible. Every news signing, every press conference, and every practice session moves them one step closer to proving that the old doubt-filled narrative was never based on truth. Only fear of what could happen if Indiana did unlock its full potential. And that, right there, is the climax of this entire story. The moment the league realizes you can't underestimate the power of a team that's found both its heart and its purpose. Maybe Natasha Howard's homecoming was the first piece of that puzzle. Maybe Caitlyn Clark's unstoppable will to win has been the catalyst all along. Whatever the case, the rest of the WNBA is officially on notice. The team nobody wanted to join is now the one nobody wants to face. Are you excited to see what happens next? Are you ready to witness the Fever's journey toward what some say could be a golden era in women's basketball? Let us know how you feel about this transformation and keep your eyes glued to the season ahead, because if there's one thing we've learned so far, it's that the best stories are the ones nobody believed at first. The Indiana Fever are ready to prove everyone wrong.